All right, y'all. This is Michael back with the Intrusive Thoughts Show, episode 2. I'm not gonna go as scripted as before and like have as many articles. But today we are gonna be discussing the illegal immigration. I think everyone at this point knows that there's been a huge influx of illegal immigrants. According to this report from the House Judiciary, we have 2.7 million inadmissible aliens that have been released into the country, 1.5 million gotaways, and they're saying that the illegal grew to 12.8 by so up 2.6 million since January of 2021. Now, what I found to be very fascinating, well, is a lot of these statistics that we got here. Prior research indicates that 69% of illegal immigrants have no education beyond high school, compared to 35% U.S. born. I mean, that's not a big shock. It is sad that these countries that they come from, and resulting of Cold War policies and the instability that we, as the United States, actually created this crisis in many ways. But this part right here, using the National Academy's estimate of immigrants' net fiscal impact by education level, we estimate that the lifetime fiscal drain, taxes paid minus costs, for each illegal immigrant is about $68,000. Now, I went and did the math. So I took the entire we just took the entire population of the illegals. So 12.8 million illegal immigrants. So according to our math, based on what I'm looking at here, and I double checked this number, like to make sure that I put it in correctly. 68,000 times the $12 million, or it's times the 12 million illegals in this country. Ready for this? Brings the entire cost for illegal immigrants in this country to $870 billion, $400 million. Let me say that again. $870.4 billion, basically. 800, close to $1 trillion, close to, I mean, that's an astronomical number. I mean, that is, I can't even wrap my head around it. I mean, that's close to some of our defense budget. I mean, that's money that could be going to schools, bridges, that's money that could have probably went to that infrastructure bill that they passed. $870 billion, and that would be probably pretty much in the lifetime of the illegal immigrant crisis of, and that's just based on this estimate. And some people would say this number could be a lot higher. Then we got to add in, what is it, another $42 billion in benefits. So that brings us pretty much to over $900 billion in spending money on them. This is draining our country, and it's draining our resources. The high welfare is not explained by an unwillingness for it. In fact, 90 have at least one worker compared to only 70. Okay, but the nation's welfare system is designed to help low-wage workers with children. So there's more about that. Okay, so here's another cost. Illegal mix of public education. Based on the average cost per student, the estimated 4 million children of illegal immigrants in public schools create an additional 68.1 billion just in 2019. I don't even know what that is, over a longer period of time, but $68.1 billion in a single year. These are some crazy statistics. I wasn't even going to look up that much for this video. But it's a problem what's going on at our southern border. I'm from Michigan, so luckily I haven't had to deal with, this type of problem, but it's coming for us. If we don't get this under control, every single state in the country is going to be housing migrants, and kids are going to have to be sent home from school to house them, basically, which actually happened in New York, and I can pull it up for you right now if you want me to, but um, it's crazy. It's insane. And I guess the next thing I want to talk about is they were trying to pass a deal with Mr. Biden to solve this crisis with House Republicans, um, and the Senate Republicans. And Mitch McConnell goes in and signs on to some awful, awful deal that, from what I was able to read, would still allow, like, I think it was like a couple thousand immigrants in a day still. No, it's zero or zero. That is it, Mr. McConnell. Um, I just saw a tweet from Lisa Murkowski, one of the more moderate Republicans, even saying it was a trash deal. Um, Mitch McConnell should be losing his job. I don't know how the heck he's still a minority leader. Dude's older than sliced bread, and he's selling out the American people. Signing these backroom deals with little Chuck and Nancy. Saying, "Oh, it's bipartisan." No, it's BS, is what it's crap. It's crap. Um, and we couldn't even oust Mayorkas, the Homeland Security guy, because House Republicans, there's four of them who don't have the courage to do the right thing. That guy should have lost his job ages ago. You're failing your basic duty. This is like one of your number one priorities as the Homeland Security Secretary. You're supposed to keep our border secure and prevent terrorists from coming in, and you can't even do that. You can't even do that. You want to say, oh, I need Congress. Do you know how many actions the president can take right now? There's so much legal authority that the president has to stop this. He could shut down the border tomorrow if he wanted to, but he doesn't. He doesn't have the political will, he doesn't have the courage, and he doesn't have the brain cells to do it. Let's see what other statistics here, but these were just crazy. 2019 paid 5.9 billion in federal income taxes. Okay. As the net cited above, these taxes are not nearly enough. So they're saying, yeah, because like I said, it was like $800 billion. So even over like let's say that 800 billion is like over like I don't know like a 20-year period. That this still don't even get close to that. That's like 24 billion being brought in. So you're still at like a net deficit of like 30 billion being drained by them. Or did I say 30? I meant to say because you're taking 50 billion off like the 800 billion. So you're still draining like 750 billion dollars with a B. Um do add perhaps 321 billion to the nation's GDP, but this is not a measure of their tax contributions or the benefits they create for the US born. All the increase in economic goes to the illegal immigrants themselves in the form of wages. So they say perhaps 321 billion to the nation's GDP. But if they're costing us 800 billion, that ain't squat. Um so let's see. From January 2021 to November, there were nearly 8 million encounters at all US borders. Let me go Google the population of my home state of Michigan just out of curiosity. So my home state of Michigan got 10 million people. The current illegal immigrant population outnumbers my entire state, just to put it in perspective for you. And 2 million of them have just come in the last couple of years. Probably more. They said 8 million in encounters, but then there's the ones who got released, apprehensions, though there are some differences between the two terms. 2.7 inadmissible aliens have been released into the country since the start of the Biden administration. This is a disaster. Oh, visa overstays. Okay. 850,000 visa foreign visitors. So that's a number that's kind of high, but not nearly as bad as the actual population of illegals compared to that. I mean, it's much higher than in the years before COVID, it says. And it's not all the individuals, but whose departure was not properly recorded. So there are some caveats to that. So that's iffy. I mean, but we're talking about just the overall illegals, like people actually living here, coming into the country illegally, going to sanctuary cities, and things like that. Okay, what does this say? In a recent report for the Center for Immigration Studies, 49.5 million immigrants, legal and illegal together in the country of 2023, up from 445 million. This is an unprecedented increase, it says. So, what did they said 49.5 million? That's even too much for legal immigrants. My gosh, it's that high? It's that high? Are we letting in that many people? We need to look at that. Ooh, the cost for New York City. Ooh, okay. So as I talked about it, New York's shutting down their frickin' schools to house these people in the name of charity and goodwill and moral sanctimonious virtue signaling. So, at a town hall meeting in the last year, Mayor Eric Adams, that guy's done nothing, he's saying they expect to spend $12 billion over the next 3 years on housing, food, healthcare, and other services. In order to cut up these new costs, the city plans to cut the budget 5% across a range of, including sanitation, public education, and the police department. And you want to know who I know talked about this and backed it up? Cardi B, the rapper. Yes, that's right. She was talking about it. You know, she was big Team Biden in 2020, but she's since come against him. So this actually backs up what she said, because I didn't get to look at, you know, the statistics she was citing. But this backs it up. 5% across a range of service, including sanitation. New York City's full of rats, honey. Okay, they got Ratatouille up in there. Public education, like I said, that you know it is costing public education just because you know they're housing them, literally canceling school, going back to Zoom classes when test scores are atrocious already. Um, so no, we got a problem. So the estimated cost of accommodating recently arrived illegal immigrants in 2023 alone will be 361 million. Now let's go look up the entire budget of New York City. Let's just see. What's their budget typically? For fiscal year, let's go to 2023. What's their typical committee report? I just want okay. City budget and head count. So, according to this, it updates city's financial plan, the city's yada yada yada. Okay. The changes introduced in the plan are primarily a result of the funding of the prior year's pension investment return shortfall, partially offset by a program to eliminate the gap totaling $2.5 billion across the first 2 years, yada yada yada. Okay, so according to this, it looks like about, is it 300? Okay, in millions. So this is like $327 billion. So if we take that 321 mil just spent on them, includes budget spending of 104 in fiscal year 2023, up from yada yada yada. So $100 billion budgeted spending. But this is just the whole budget, I'm pretty sure. So roughly 10% of their budget is being spent to house migrants. 10%, 10%, 10%. We can look at all their let's look at their budgets here. So right now, fiscal year 2023 total expenditures, so there was no gap. Oh, they broke even, it looks like, for once. But it looks like they're going to have some bigger shortfalls coming up, possibly. Not terrible. I've seen worse, but it's not good to have a $4,000 shortfall. So this is their budget right now. Anyways, let's go back to this. Let's see here. So, like I said, they don't have a lot of education. Welfare used based on legal status of the household head. So welfare used, 59.4% of illegals just use welfare, period. Point blank. Any welfare, they're higher already. Legal and US born. For cash types of welfare, legal immigrants actually use more. But food, holy moly, that is a big gap there. And that's concerning because food has gotten very expensive, first of all. Medicaid, I would say Medicaid's pretty even. Housing's pretty even as well. But look at this food one should piss you off a little bit because there's people starving on our own streets right now. And this is leaving less, available for those people. Okay, let's go. There's the uninsured, illegal tax payments. But still, okay. So this is their whole. Okay, so we pretty much read their whole report here, and there's actually all the citations. I will probably link this in bio, or not in the bio, in the description below. I kind of, just kind of glossed over it. But what's happening with our border and the Mitch McConnell sellout is completely unacceptable. No deal, first of all. Second of all, you should lose your job, Mitch McConnell. You're done as minority leader. I don't know how the heck you've kept it. You are older than sliced bread, sir. I can't believe you would sign on to any deal that lets in the amount of immigrants that you talked about and the billions of dollars you want to send to foreign countries and all these other peoples who ain't us. The America Last policies, like, I'm over it. And I'm just gonna be all ragey rage. I could be Alex Jones level of angry. I wasn't even gonna do a video like this, but I kind of decided to because this has kind of been pissing me off a little bit. And I'm like, if we don't stop this illegal immigrant crisis right now, not only is it gonna get worse, it's gonna become a huge problem. I mean, Chicago ain't that far from me, and they're kind of having their own problem with it right now. Um, it could be coming to Michigan tomorrow, honestly. Um, and then that's frightening. And New York, it's northeast of here. I mean, yeah, I think it's like 10 hours, 14-hour drive. Let me Google it. Well, I don't want to give away my location. I probably shouldn't, but so I think somewhere around in that area, that ballpark. They're gonna start busting them all over the country. They already are. I remember seeing another report of, it was like 800,000 minors, children cannot be accounted for. Mayorkas was asked about it. Our home Department of Homeland Security Secretary was asked about it. No answer. Nothing. All right, now we're gonna kind of shift gears, I guess, onto the 2024 election. I don't know. Let's just talk about it. Um, do I cross this out? I don't know. Whatever. First we gotta talk about the Nevada primary that happened yesterday. I don't know why Nikki Haley's still in the race. She's weak on immigration. She's weak on China. She's weak in just about everything that matters. She's flip-flopped her positions so many times. She's a fake. She's a fraud. She's a fake and a fraud. Period. End of discussion. She lost to so basically what happened with Nevada is Democrats took over and they wanted there to be a primary system. The state has typically had a caucus system for years. And the GOP said, no, we're still doing our caucus. We're going to have a separate caucus on, I think it's either tomorrow. I think it's tomorrow. Separate from the primary, but only the caucus results are going to count. So candidates had to choose which one they would be in. Nimrata decided to go into the primary that wasn't going to count, but she at least wanted to show that maybe she could still quote unquote win. But there was an option on that ballot that said none of these candidates. That one won 60% to like her 30%. She's over. She's a fake and a fraud. People see that. Nobody wants her. I don't know how she still has a career. She's the Bush era reincarnated, basically. With the wars, with the billions and bajillions of dollars they want to spend in Ukraine, in Israel, and other places. And we can't even have a border. And they're tying the two together like that. They're tying them together. Look, I hope it doesn't look like I'm like flipping the camera off. I mean, it makes you wanna, honestly, doesn't it? So the thing about her, and Tucker Carlson, someone I watch occasionally, called Nikki Haley a hologram. That's exactly what she is. She's the representative of the oligarch class, of the elites, of the people that don't benefit this country. Um, you know, her border policy, she is just like, where's the strength? The one thing that Trump has done so good is be strong about illegal immigration. He uses the language no one else wants to use. Some people don't like it, but it needs to be said. Deport, deport, deport. Period. That needs to be our policy. 2025, if Trump's president, deport, and that's exactly what he wants to do. We are gonna have to do mass deportation now. And everyone's gonna be complaining about it. Everyone's gonna get their little hashtags and their little black squares ready for their fake activism, and things like that. But y'all brought this upon yourselves. We could have talked about immigration reform and maybe some things we could have done. But when you let in this many millions of people, people are pissed about it too, okay? The very voters who supported you, like y'all wanted student loan forgiveness, you ain't even getting that. You're getting three, possibly three wars, honestly. Um, I know there's like stuff going on with Taiwan possibly. I know there was stuff going on in Yemen and like with the Houthis, the Israel. Yeah, obviously got Ukraine like the main event, which Zelensky's getting jealous that he's not the main topic anymore, that he's not the main character. Um, you know, so going back, I guess, to us as a country and where we are at right now, we are at something unsustainable. We are at something that will break this country, honestly. This country's at the breaking point with illegal immigration. Um, when it drains your resources that much, I mean, some of these Democrats are already starting to beg for deportations already. Honestly, even Eric Adams is getting over it. The 5% budget cuts for your own citizens and things like that is just baloney. I guess the next thing I want to intrusively think about is, I guess the RNC and Ronna McDaniel obviously is talking about stepping down. My issue now with the Republican Party at the moment is the lack of fundraising, the lack of social media presence, the focus on the wrong issues. Talk about banning TikTok because the Chinese gonna spy on us. As if my own government ain't doing that. As if my own government ain't doing that. Miss Nikki Hayley talking about she wants to verify your identity online. You have the right to be anonymous, period. You have the right to be anonymous. Every single of our founding fathers used pseudonyms, excuse me, not synonyms, pseudonyms to do their writing. Several female authors did too, who probably wouldn't have gotten to where they were if they didn't use pseudonyms. Okay? Miss Nimrata, which her name's a pseudonym too, because she went and changed her name and her husband's name, and she cheated on him still. So my issue right now is there is still a fragment, a segment of the Republican Party that wants to put us last still, that wants us to be Israel, this, that, and the other. Like it's every other sentence out of their mouths. Um, and people are probably gonna ask, "Oh, what's your opinion on Israel and Palestine?" It's America first, baby. Okay, it ain't nothing else. It ain't that deep. Neither side to me has the moral high ground when you're targeting civilians on both sides. I have zero tolerance for that. Uh-uh. Uh-uh. Um, Zero tolerance for that. What's happening in Israel and Gaza is completely unacceptable. Um, I think Benjamin Netanyahu is the single biggest threat to world peace right now. I will say that to the end of time. He has gotten in the way. He doesn't even want a two-state solution anymore. He said it himself, and Hamas has said it themselves too. What happens when you have two sides that want to annihilate each other completely? Genocide. Both they want to wipe each other out. Both sides do. Why are we funding? And we funded both sides, by the way. I was remember researching about the Palestinians, and we sent them money. Let me Google it. I know it was yeah, here it is. It was Wikipedia. But it talked about like we sent them billions of dollars in weapons after kind of our peace kind of issues. So peace process, the Oslo Accords. So Camp David, so yada yada. They through okay, a non-militarized Palestinian state. It should have always stayed non-military. It should have stayed non-militarized way longer. First of all, in my opinion, these are radical. These are some radical people, and they shouldn't have had that. Um, I think they maybe could have had representation in the government. We were willing to give them weapons, and that clearly was a mistake. Let me be clear about that. Arab peace initiatives. So I know there's the settlement growth, which is terrible. They're actually talking about sanctioning that. Um, but everyone wants me to take a side on this war. That again, who wins? There's no victory to be had in that war. When you have two sides that want to completely annihilate civilians, topple buildings, blow up car bombs, On both, let me be clear. Let me be clear. Let me be clear. This war is nasty, and it's a war of attrition. Look at these casualty numbers. 250 plus in the 2021 crisis. Where is it? There should be the 2023 numbers somewhere. Why did they move that? There was another spot that had it. Let me look for it. But okay. Israel in war, so they have a coalition government. So Benjamin Netanyahu, this guy is a threat to world peace. I will say it to the end of time again. When he's the one, every single prime minister of Israel said they've wanted a two-state solution. Every single one of them. And I know it's been difficult, and I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna sit here and simp for Hamas either. But Benjamin Netanyahu is the bigger problem here because he's egging them on. And when you have that, when he says stuff like that, who wants peace with that? They're just gonna keep going for it. Um, and another thing is, there's been a lot of calls for a ceasefire, and I get the concern that they are worried that Hamas is gonna regroup and whatnot, and that's fair. That's a fair criticism, but I mean, honestly, I don't know. It's costing Biden a lot of support among his progressive followers. He has lost every Muslim voter in the state of Michigan alone. He's plummeted it with them. He had like 69% of their vote in like 2020. He's at like 27. It's abysmal. Okay, like because people they know people over there in that region. Um, and he is gonna lose their support a lot. So, this is a probably Biden's biggest political blind spot right now. Um, I do think there maybe needs to be a ceasefire at this point because if this continues, there won't be an Israel left or a Palestine left. And that seems to be where we're heading with this war is annihilation. Pure and simple annihilation. Um, if it doesn't stop. I've never seen such destruction. Alright, so kind of the next thing I'm going to discuss today, I just kind of wanted to do a little bit of everything with my Intrusive Thoughts show. We're going to be talking about economic data. So our current inflation rate, it says is for 2023 is 3.4. Do they have the 2024 numbers? Okay, they do not yet. But it looks like the January numbers we will have February. Oh, okay, in like a week it looks like. Um, so you can see that it's typically been in a pretty low range, like close to 2%. And then we had the Biden inflation in part because of things like spending, those stimulus bills, things like that. Our money supply going up because we literally just print money out of thin air for the recession of 2020. So we look at this. We look at Trump's presidency right here from 2017 to 2020. Very low. Actually, kind of below the average in some cases. Just about right in that target range of what the Fed targets, which is 2% typically. And then in 2021, like I said, when Biden passed, more stimulus bills, which some people thought we needed, I don't know. I don't know why the Fed didn't start lowering when we were in this 5% range right here in 2021. We really should have been heightening here. I still have zero. I know they were worried about employment because unemployment kind of ticks up with rates are too high for too long. So I get that the Fed maybe was a little worried about that, but I feel like for a little bit they were starting to get too concerned with it by the end of 2021. And we had this jump here, and then it just really just kept going up. And then everything with Russia, happened, right here, bringing it really high. It went down a little bit, and then it goes back up, and by June we're hitting 9.1. The gas prices are bad. Joe Biden's approval rating is tanking. And then we kind of start to slowly slowly see a decline. It's very slow for the rest of 2022. And even for a good chunk of 2023, it really took all the way till June right here to really start seeing a decent number that kind of ticked up for a bit. Summer spending, usually it was a little higher, things like that. And then it kind of seems to be right now in this 3.2 range. It is lower than 2021, which is good, so we are making progress there. But why do we target a 2% rate? So basically, there's a couple reasons. According to this, it comes from the 2012 FOMC, which is the Federal Open Market Committee. They're the ones who decide the rates and things like that. That was kind of in the aftermath of the 2008 recession, where they lowered rates a lot to near zero, the interest rates, which is used to keep inflation down. So they targeted 2% inflation. Some say, though, it comes from James Bullard. But the thing with that 2% target is it's a much longer term target. So in the short term, even if you're a little bit over, you would still consider it on target. Um, to clarify, this does not mean inflation must be 2% in the short term. Rather, monetary policy should be set so that inflation moves toward the target over time and, in the absence of unpredictability, yada yada, would reach 2% in the medium term. So in a somewhat longer term, and it's also because they use, core PCE. There's several reasons why they use it. They also talk about this measurement bias. Is okay. One reason like it tends to sit on numerical, but that's probably is measuring it is very difficult. So yeah, it's just difficult. There's upward bias. Like it says right here, just the slight upward bias just exists, period. That's why it's 2% and not 0%. Because 2% when you account for that upward bias technically is a 0% inflation rate. And that's why they also don't be targeting, deflation. Let me take a sip of my Sprite real quick because I've been talking for like 30 minutes. Okay. So room to cut interest rates, avoiding deflation. So, deflation is general sustained downward movement of goods. Some people think that the effect of a given size would be more harmful for the economy than a positive. So we've had deflation. It happened during the Great Recession. Prices going down too low would also not be good because then, companies are starting to make less money and things like that. Well, I don't know much about that, to be honest with you. But anyway, even with these low inflation numbers, we need to point out a couple things. First of all, food is still pretty inflated. 2.7%. All items 3.4. Energy's made a good drop. That's like the only area that we've made progress on. What the Democrats don't seem to get is this is the rate of change year over year. So all this right now means is that the rate of change has slowed down a lot. The rate of the increases has slowed down. But prices are still very, very elevated. Okay? They are very elevated. This Sprite, 12 pack. I worked in retail for 4 years. I saw inflation with my own two eyes. Um, and the reason, like I said, I want to talk about this is I feel like there's been so much gaslighting about it. And people not understanding that there's still some very real effects that we're dealing with the COVID policies, with the money injected into the economy. Um, so even though this is a good number, this is an improvement. Okay, we're not at this number. We're not at this number. We're not at these awful numbers we had in 2022 and even parts of 2021. Okay, so like Joe Biden's had inflation for a good chunk of his presidency. I mean, let's look at it. This accelerated rates, accelerated. Like it doesn't even start to get down to a decent rate till like the second, like till like halfway through last year, basically. So we've only had like basically half of his presidency has been inflation, basically, when you look at it like that. Um, and again, while the rate of inflation has decreased, those price increases are still there. And people aren't getting the pay increases. They're starting to catch up. I think they're actually a little bit ahead now. But let's look at that. Wage growth versus inflation. Let's look at this. This is a very, very important graph. Um, I don't know what is this one. Okay, this is for several years. So this only goes up to 2021. So CPI, Consumer Price Index. And if we look at over here, so I think blue's the headline inflation, and I think red. Okay, wages and unemployment. Now that's an interesting one. So, people have been demanding a lot better wages, obviously, because of inflation. But even with a 6% increase, that ain't nothing. And you want to know why that's nothing? Because you had 8% the month prior, 8.3 in another month. Like, this has a lot ways to go, actually. And you can actually see during the Great Recession, too, when unemployment went high, that growth actually slowed down really bad. Like, this is like, I think that's below 2%. It's like 1%. So that's nothing. So when we're looking at, okay, so okay, I'm trying to see, where's that graph? So this is the unemployment one. I think, okay, this is the CPI, and I think these are the wage growth, which has been above this blue line for quite a while. We've had solid wage growth for a long time, actually. Um, the recession actually helped with that a little bit in 2020 because the CPI went down because spending was happening because everything was closed. Everything was closed. Um, so, and this is only 2021, so this rate has gone down a lot. We're at like this number. We're about like right here. We're getting closer to reaching a better number, but there's still a lot of work to do. I wanted to talk about that because it honestly infuriates me that this administration continues to gaslight us and call these numbers good. Um, this is still not good. Growth outpaces inflation. So here's a more recent one. Even even though this is true, there's still all those other increases that happened. And this is barely nothing. Like you're barely beating inflation right now. You're beating it by like a couple percent, not even a percentage point. That's pathetic actually. These are some pathetic numbers. You want to be way ahead of that. Okay? You want your money to have strong. You want it to have strength. Here's a 2020 to 2023 graph. So, wages, like look at this. This was during Trump's last year in office. Um, Even before that, he had really good inflation numbers. And things like that. Wages were actually look so 3.9 to 1%. That's pretty decent growth there because you have a 2% gap there. So you're actually getting something. So then we get to here. Even in January 2021, but Trump was still in office for a bit of that, and then Biden the rest of it. February still pretty decent, but then we get to March, and that's when the gap seems to start closing, and then we get to April, May, June, July, August, and this is right here. Like I said, this 2021 like period right here pisses me off because we could have stopped inflation from going up to these numbers over here. If the Fed had acted here, we probably could have kept it at like a straight line, most likely. Would have been the best case scenario. Would have just been to keep that at a straight line and do a slower rate increase because we did some pretty rapid ones during this era right here in 2022. Um, so our monetary policy, I feel, was still a bit behind. I feel like if we acted sooner on some of the rate increases, that we probably wouldn't have never seen anything past 5% inflation. I mean, when at first you saw the 5%, people were kind of like, "Oh, it's transitory, this, that, and the other." This ain't transitory, sweetie. That's losing purchasing power a crap ton. A lot, honey. That's a 3% gap right there. Huge gap right there. I mean, we're outpacing it decently now, but like, look at where we were. We were over here. We were up 3 percentage points at one point. We had purchasing power, like a lot. Our purchasing power was never this strong over here in this era right here. This gap is actually going back up with inflation's actually ticked up a little bit probably because of holiday spending. Typically when there's a little more, spending activity, it does tick up a bit. Um, I mean, while we're getting close to that 2% number. And even if we had a 2% number, it would still be decent, but like I said, there's still a lot of work to be done. These type of effects we will be dealing with for a very long time. We will be reeling from the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic probably for the next decade, honestly. Um, the permanent effects of those policies costing us $8 trillion, the lockdowns, the controversial vaccine and mask mandates, and things like that. The effects there are so permanent. And people who lost their loved ones, obviously, of course. But I do feel like, again, just going back, just to solely focus on our monetary economic outlook. So far, growth's been pretty decent in 2024. Um, it'll probably, hopefully, if Biden doesn't screw it up and get us into a war or some type of crisis of some sort, we'll be okay. I did hear something about New York Bank losing a lot of money. So they increased. So there is something else that we need to talk about, which is okay. So this is their share price. This is their bank, Signature Bank. So actually during 2023 there was a decrease in deposits among regional banks. In part because of interest rates. Because when businesses have higher borrowing costs, they don't borrow as much. It's that simple, folks. So when interest rates go up, the cost to borrow is more. And the reason we have to do that to defeat inflation is because you have less money going into the system. Because you have too much money in the system. When your system is too flush with cash, things are going to cost more money. And I wish some of these people running our country even understood basic economics. But we just print money like it's no tomorrow. I remember in my economics class we talked about the propensity of money, where you do some calculation and you can multiply like the actual how much it's actually adding in economic activity. And we just did it for just looking at the 2008, the bailouts and stuff like that, and it was crazy. We definitely did a lot more this time around. There was some legit concerns, about making sure we had enough stimulus, making sure the economy kept moving. But I think we went way too overboard with it. See, and that's where the two criticisms. 2008, people thought we did not do enough. 2020, we probably did too much, most likely. Um, So my economic outlook is a pretty decent. I mean, when you look at 2023, I mean, let's go to the S&P 500 for the past. Let's do the past 10 years. Let's really get a good look at it. I guess let's do the 5. Okay. So 2020, 2018, 2020, obviously you had the recession there, and we recovered in part because of that stimulus, most likely. And we have a decent stock market for much of 2021. So we really have this long run right here, really big run, huge bull. That was a pretty big bull run. 2022, This pisses me off too. We never considered 2022 a recession year when there actually was two quarterly drops in a row. It met the definition, but because Biden's in office, we don't get to call it a recession. It was though. 2022 was a recession year, 100,000%. When you look at decreases of that much, going down from 4,600 to a 35, whatever. That's a recession, and it wasn't a quick recession. It was more of a typical recession where it was a lot slower. Whereas 2020 was just a boom crash, hit you on the face kind of crash. Um, which it came up at the same energy, of course. 2020 was actually the shortest recession, one of the shortest recessions ever recorded. When you're already like back at what you were and you're up higher than it by August, it looks like when we're looking at this. So 2022, you kind of see it's kind of stalls, it goes down, it hits like the bottom here in October, and you start to have some recovery, you know, little splits here and there. 2023, everyone likes to act like it was a decent year in terms of stocks, but when you compare it to 2021 and 2020, it's pretty like it's meh. It's not like that amazing. And actually, so far, it's been looking like 2024 has been the more amazing year so far in terms of the stock market. So far, so far. Let me be clear, so far. Because something can mess up easily. We could go to war with Iran. We could go to war with Iraq. Costs of oil and travel goes up. Those type of things. Um, so it could. I don't know if it'll be as strong as this. It'll probably be stronger than 2023. I want everyone to win in the economy at the end of the day. But if it goes too slow, or if it doesn't go enough where people feel like they have more purchasing power, then Biden's finished, I would hope. I'm not happy with this economic record when gas is $7 in California and $5 at one point. This 2022 was awful with that. Awful. 2023 has been a lot better. 2024 has been a lot better with that. The economy seems to show that. 2024, like I said, has had some pretty decently strong growth, and even the end of 2023 seemed to we ended pretty strong. After kind of, I would say a kind of slower, and even this run up to 2020 was faster than that, pretty much. We went from 2707 to 3,234, which is like a 500 point increase, I think. 308.39, and you're only going to, what is it? So what is it? 3839. I mean, that's still actually a pretty big increase, actually, I would say. But still, in comparison, obviously, to the 2020-2021 bull run here, you're not going to have anything like that again for a while, probably. Um, it won't matter who's in office. Even if Biden wins a second term and let's say he doesn't mess it up, he keeps things good. Um, I do see growth slowing a little bit. I don't see us necessarily going into a recession this year. Maybe I hope I'm right about that, honestly, because if I'm wrong, I just jinxed us, and you're gonna be pissed at me. But so yeah, that's kind of the wage growth. That's kind of the economic and kind of just my intrusive thoughts about various things. So I think I'm going to end it here. I kind of talked about a lot. I wanted this to be a longer video, kind of to discuss several topics. I wanted more content for the YouTube channel. I like doing live research with y'all. I think I'm going to do that more. Um, just because I think it's helpful to visualize some of this stuff, to, see it with your own two eyes. But the thing with the Biden, well, and you gotta remember this too, with the Biden and versus the Trump economy, is Trump had us recovering, but it still wasn't enough for him to win re-election. That could be said for Biden. It's not going the rate people want it to. That cost of living is still awful. I mean, housing, when you have interest rates and already high prices, combined like that, it's not good. Um, so I don't know if we'll get a recession this year. Possibly get one next year. Um, things like that. So like I said, the 2020 economic agenda is going to be with us for a long time. And it's kind of a continuation of the 2008 agenda of pump the money in the economy. Um, it's going to be living bailout to bailout, unfortunately, which is terrible too because you're just prolonging the downfall. And it often makes the downfalls worse sometimes. Um, it prolongs it, or delays the inevitable, I guess you could call it. So, anyways, I think I'm gonna just leave this here. Those are my just intrusive thoughts. Like, I really did no planning for this video today. I kind of just, I was already gonna talk about illegal immigration, but I decided to throw some other things in there. Anyways, like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'll also be doing more gaming content. I know I should have another video coming out later, and things like that. Anyways, you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.